and welcome to GameSack. This time around, we're taking a look at the mighty Commodore Amiga CD32.
Yeah, one of the first 32-bit CD systems released to the market.
Indeed.
So instead of just babbling, why don't you just tell us about it, Joe? Because there's a lot of people that probably don't know anything about it.
Okay. The Commodore Amiga CD32. The CD32 is a consoleized version of the Amiga computer system, most closely resembling the Amiga 1200 model. Released primarily in Europe, it was never officially sold in the US. However, NTSC versions of the console were sold in Canada. Also, most games are designed only with PAL consoles in mind. The controller is quite odd, but it's actually somewhat comfortable to hold. The D-pad is absolutely awful, however, and Commodore should feel very ashamed. Optional accessories like an Amiga mouse could be used in many games, and a video CD FMV cartridge could be added. With a keyboard and hard drive, you could even upgrade the console to a low-level Amiga 1200. The games were indeed on CD, some of them containing multiple games. The 32-bit system is powered by a Motorola 68 EC020 running at 14.3 MHz with 16.8 million colors, 2 MB of RAM, and 4 channels of sound straight from the Amiga line of computers. The CD32 could also run a lot of Amiga CD and Commodore CD TV software. That's pretty cool. Due to Commodore's less than stellar finances and management, the Amiga CD32 lived a short life, selling over 100,000 units with around 180 compatible games released.
All right, Joe, thanks, man. That's some really good information there.
You're welcome.
And I've got to agree that the D-pad pretty much sucks on that thing, even though the controller is fairly comfortable.
Yeah.
But another complaint that I got is that the buttons have like hieroglyphs on them. I mean, why can't they just have normal naming conventions like A, B, C, D or something?
I guess you're just supposed to go by the color.
Okay, well, speaking of color, let's look at some of the games on here.
Let's do it.
This action platformer is Arabian Nights. It's one of the better titles that I got a chance to try out and feels like a really solid experience. Controlling Sinbad Jr. is easy, even though he does have a tendency to feel a bit slippery. But after a short time with the game, I got used to it. There's a small amount of traversing back and forth in each area, as you need to find keys and other items that'll help you reach the end of a level. I really like the graphics and artwork here, and there's even a few layers of parallax scrolling. My only complaint would be that this game feels and sounds more like a 16-bit game than a 32-bit game. I was hoping for some CD quality music, but what we have here is good enough and it's actually enjoyable. Playing this game, I don't see anything that can't be done on the Genesis or Super Nintendo. If you have 32-bit hardware at your disposal, you should put it to use. But again, even though it's not taking advantage of the hardware, it's still a fun title that I'd like to play again. Another platformer is Bubble and Squeak. This one started out really strong for me. It had some fun platforming and tons of jewels to collect. Plus it has a CD quality soundtrack that's very enjoyable. This was all great, and then I met up with that blue alien Squeak. You don't control him, but you give him commands of wait and come on. This was working well for a while, and I thought, well, this isn't so bad. Not long after that, well, actually the second level of the game, I got to a point where I kept telling Squeak to come on, but he wouldn't follow. Obviously, this platform is too high for him to jump to, and for the life of me, I couldn't figure out where to go or how to get him up there. I needed to get him up there because both players have to be at the end of the level to advance. After about 15 minutes, I just gave up. Obviously, there was something I was missing, but what was it? Still, if I did own an Amiga CD32, this would be one title that I would have in my collection. Here's Chaos Engine. This game was released in the US as Soldiers of Fortune. It's an overhead run and gun game. It's really strange because for some reason you can't play alone, as you need to have another player with you, be it a real person or just AI. Well, whatever, because the game is fun to play. As with most games of this genre, you just run around and shoot everything in your path, and you know what, I find nothing wrong with that. You can choose from 6 soldiers, all with different weapons and specials. There's 4 levels to each world in this game. The levels are medium in length, and there's lots of secret areas and puzzles to figure out as you make your way to the end. The graphics are okay, and there's some really nicely detailed artwork if you take the time to look. There's a fair amount of voice throughout the game, and it sounds pretty good.
Special power.
Hell, even the Genesis version sounds just as good in voice and music, which again makes me wonder why on a 32-bit system is this just 16-bit quality? It's just another missed opportunity, but it's still a fun game to play, and if you don't have an Amiga CD32, pick it up on the Genesis or SNES.
Layer C. Layer C.
Beneath a Steel Sky is a really cool point-and-click cyberpunk adventure game. This one seems to require the use of the Amiga mouse. You're Foster, and the story from what I can tell so far is that you've been shot down and your robot is broken. Also, your people have been all but wiped out, and now these guys are trying to capture you. Oh no! Using a fairly typical point-and-click interface, you go around and get clues to find out how to proceed to the next area. You can also choose which questions you want to ask in order to direct the flow of the conversation. It's all very, relaxing, and I like it quite a bit. There's no real rush to do anything, so you can take your time to see what works. Be careful though, because you can get killed if you're careless. You eventually fix your robot, and he's a complete smartass, but you're definitely going to need his help. You can choose to have voice only, text only, or both voice and text. It really slows down the game to have the voices on, since it must load each and every sentence individually.
How come your elevator's not working?
The writing is nifty, and it has some decent humor here and there. The graphics fit well, and the music is great. I haven't gotten very far yet, but I do like this style of game for sure, and I would definitely recommend this to any CD32 owner as well as regular-ass Amiga owners. It's also on DOS and other OSs. Hell, you can even get it for the iOS.
Can you distract that maintenance man?
What do you suggest? A song and dance routine?
This is Bump and Burn from Grand Slam. I guess they don't believe in title screens. Anyway, this is a cartoony racer that lends itself to the kart racing genre. You have a button for acceleration and nothing for brake that I could find. Oh well, who the hell needs brakes? When you drive over the stars that are on the ground, you pick up an item. You can then press a button to use these. Honestly, I didn't find any of them tremendously effective. There are a bunch of different tracks, and of course they each have their own themes. Some of them can be pretty crazy, like the volcano stage with its cliffs and bridges that are really tough to stay on. You also pick up coins on the road that you can spend in the shop between races upgrading your vehicle. Unfortunately, the control isn't that great. It's a bit loose and not overly responsive. The graphics are 16-bit all the way, but that doesn't mean that they're bad. They could use some better color and more frames of animation on the objects though. The music's not bad, but certainly not memorable. In fact, this game is pretty much average all around. Top Gear 2 is an Amiga game that runs on the CD32. This is an average-looking racer that's actually pretty fun. There's nothing amazingly special about it, but it does have something that makes you want to keep playing. This is also on the Super Nintendo and is pretty much the same, only with some nicer colors here and there and much better music. Not that the Super Nintendo was bad or anything. Overall, it's a pretty cool lap racer, if a bit bare bones.
No, this isn't Star Fox. Seriously, it's not. This game is called Guardian. It's obviously trying to capitalize on the awesomeness that is Star Fox, but it just fails hard. Okay, before I talk about this game, I gotta say that the designer obviously loves Star Wars. In the opening cinema, your paper airplane is obviously going after a TIE fighter. Then on the start screen, I'm pretty sure that's the Death Star in the background. Anyways, let's get back to this horrible game. As you start playing the first level, it looks almost identical to Star Fox right down to the mountains in the background. But there's a large difference in gameplay. In this one, you have free flight around a medium-sized level. Your object is kind of unknown as you keep fighting enemy ships. At some point, you'll do something that will let you pass the level. What the trigger is, I have no idea. You have 2 radar windows at the top of the screen, and God knows how to read them because I can't make heads or tails of either of them. The graphics are okay if you're playing on the Super Nintendo, but you're not. You're playing on a 32-bit system. Is this really all that the system is capable of doing? Sadly, this game just feels incomplete from the awkward controls to the less than average soundtrack. Buy Star Fox, you will have a much better experience. I was surprised to see Super Stardust on here. This, of course, is the prequel to Super Stardust HD on the PS3. I had no idea this game had any earlier incarnations. Anyway, this one plays exactly like Asteroids without the rotary dial. You press a button to thrust forward and left and right to rotate. Obviously, you can also fire. You collect little items, some of which are new weapons, but I can't figure out how to switch to the new weapons for the life of me. Also, each stage of a world looks exactly the same. Like Super Stardust HD, I got bored fairly quickly, but it was still neat to see here. At least the music and graphics are fairly good.
This is Overkill and Lunar Sea. That's right, 2 games on a single disc. Let's look at Overkill first. This one is a basic Defender clone. The screen scrolls forever in each direction since it loops. There are hostages to save as well. Everything moves so fast that it's really hard to keep from dying at first. You gotta be careful, and that's something that's really tough to do with the CD32 control pad. The graphics and parallax scrolling are really nice, but it sure could use some music. Alright, let's check out Lunar Sea. This is a poor man's side-scrolling shooter. You keep scrolling to the right and blowing stuff up. You do have a Gradius-style power-up system though. You also have a life bar. You can even restore your life bar with power-ups. So yeah, all that stuff is cool, but unfortunately there just isn't very much variety at all and there's no music. In my opinion, Overkill is the better of the 2 games on this disc. Deep Core starts out with a lot of promise. It has a decent opening sequence and some pumpin' music. Then you get to the game, which is kind of an action platformer. Basically, you're just making your way, collecting items, destroying enemies, and going through doors. You know, just run-of-the-mill stuff. This is one of the many CD32 games where pressing up jumps. Now, I understand that these are ancient computer games, but they really should have tweaked these to have a jump button on the CD32 version. Also, there's no music to liven things up. I think I would have liked this one a lot if I played it, say, back in the Apple IIe days, but even by the time the 8-bit consoles came around, this one would have seemed dated. And this one was released in 1993. Also, listen to the sound effects. I swear it's just some guy going, pew, pew, pew! Anyway, let's move on. Gloom is a homebrew for the Amiga made to run on the CD32. As you can guess by the name, it's a Doom clone meant to show off the system's amazing 32-bit power. Unfortunately, the game takes up only a small portion of the screen and it seems to have a resolution of, I don't know, 3? You walk around shooting people for no reason and they all explode violently and scream as they remember their loved ones one final time as their heads go rolling. But the game does let you strafe using the shoulder buttons, so Dave would definitely like this one. I guess it's neat to finally see all the 32-bit power shine through in its full glory, but it's still weaker than a 32X or probably even a Super Effects chip.
Let's look at Roadkill, which is a violent top-down racer. If you've played Micro Machines or other similar games, you know how this one controls. Pick your racer in the beginning and off you go. During a race, you can collect items to help you destroy your opponent. Unfortunately, there's really not a lot of offensive weapons here. The racing action's alright. You'll be bouncing off a lot of walls until you memorize the track layout. You earn lots of cash during a race, which is tallied up after. I'm not sure what the money is good for since there seems to be no place to spend it that I've seen. I really like the graphics, I just wish there was more variety in the background between each stage. What music is here is good, but I wish there was some during the race. And why does this engine noise only come out of the left speaker? To top it all off, you have a limited number of continues, yet there's also a password feature. Not bad, but honestly, I'd rather play Micro Machines. Want some sweet 32-bit pinball? Why not try Pinball Illusions instead? Actually, it's not that bad. You get to select from 3 different boards to play on. Each is a fairly basic board, nothing insane really. You can switch resolutions at any time by pressing left or right. I prefer the one that gives me a close-up view as I think it just looks better. But maybe you like seeing more of the playfield at once. It's your call. The music is mostly streamed from the CD, though I swear I hear some Amiga mod music from time to time. It all sounds fairly good. There's an animated LED display at the top of the screen. The boards look decent as well, though nothing mind-blowing. The ball physics seem fairly good, but perhaps slightly bouncy. I found it hard to trap the ball on a flipper. It always seemed to have too much momentum. These same people made other pinball games for the system like Pinball Fantasies. They're mostly the same, and this one is the second in the series with Illusions being the third. But I like the Haunted Graveyard board in this one, and of course I just had to mention it. Overall, these are pretty fun to play.
Let's take a quick look at the Alien Breed games. First up is Tower Assault. This is an overhead free-roaming run and gun. You run around avoiding falling meteor fragments and shoot the occasional rat. But once you make your way inside one of the bases, you see that aliens are there and they've ripped everyone else to pieces. You wander around shooting the aliens and picking up more ammo as well as clues that are laying around. You have to trigger certain events in order to advance into the next area, so be sure to explore. The graphics and sound they're decent enough. Not a bad game, I say.
Jordan, warning. Energy low.
Alien Breed 2 is also on the same disc. This one starts you off not only with meteor fragments to avoid, but also helicopters. You can shoot them down, but good luck because it does not take long for you to die in this one. I couldn't seem to find my way out of level 1 as all the doors were locked. Oh well, I had more fun with part 1 anyway. And then there's Alien Breed 3D, which is an Amiga game which can run on the CD32. Kind of. Oh, this one has an elaborate anti-piracy scheme. It's too bad that this is the most exciting part of the game. So we finally get in and we have a nasty-ass 3D view that's much worse than Gloom. We also have a frame rate of about -6. At first I couldn't figure out how to open the door here and get on with the game, but eventually aliens started attacking me. Trying to aim with the CD32 pad is a huge chore in itself. Looking at the options screen, I think this game would play much better if you hooked up a keyboard, but that won't fix the other issues. But come on, at least the music is excellent. Wow, Dave, there are a lot of European games on this thing. It's like there's only European games. What the hell, Dave? What the hell?
You know, that's a darn good question. You figure a European console would have more than just European games on it, but I guess not. So anyways, what do you think so far?
I think we need to look at some more of the games.
Yeah, that'd probably be a good idea to take a look at a few more to get a better opinion.
Zool might be one of the better European platformers out there. Might be. According to the opening FMV, which CD32 games don't often have by the way, you crash land on a planet and you begin your invasion. You're Zool and you're a ninja who runs around and collects things, as all ninjas tend to do. You can also climb walls, shoot a gun, and use a close range attack. There's lots of items to collect, lots and lots of items, so you better grab them all. You won't be able to exit a level until you have 99% of them. And that's weird because there's still tons of stuff around once your meter hits 99%. The items are based on the level. So in the first world you collect candy things, and in the second world you collect CDs and tapes and stuff like that. Now, why Zool needs all this stuff I will never know. And why the hell is the first level some random ass Candyland area? This level was always shown in reviews and ads of this game for other platforms, and it's not a good looking level to show off. At the end of the fourth area of each world, you come to a boss fight. But be careful, because even if you defeat the boss, you still might die trying to reach the exit. Honestly, I feel like the game moves too fast for its own good, and everything feels really slippery. I also think that the level design and enemy placement are both painfully bad, and the enemies regenerate almost immediately once you kill them. It's like the designers never played Mario, or even Sonic for that matter, to figure out how tight play mechanics and level design make for a more enjoyable game. But at least there's some cool parallax scrolling, I guess. Let's not forget that this is a 32-bit system. The music is also pretty good, and it's streamed off of the CD. I feel that if I didn't grow up with much better games, I'd probably be able to appreciate Zool more than I do. Anyway, let's take a look at Zool 2. This one lets you play as Zool or Zoolette, I don't know. The basic gameplay is pretty much the same, but Zool climbs and jumps off walls differently now. Once you get to the top of an incline, you need to press backwards on the D-pad to jump off and then quickly press the other direction to get on top of the surface. It's very weird. The level design and enemy placement are still chaotic at best, but at least the graphics are a little better. Hell, even the music is a little better. All in all, I'd rather play Zool 2 here, but I really don't want to play either. But if you do, you can also get this one on lots of other platforms like the Game Boy, Genesis, and Super Nintendo. Unless you want to play Zool 2, then it's either this, the Amiga proper, the PC, or the Jaguar, or as the British say, Jaguar.
Here's Simon the Sorcerer. This one features a full talkie soundtrack. Oh boy! So you're an English lad who accidentally gets stuck in a world of Wizards and Warcraft. Or Wizards and Warriors, I don't know. You've got to find and deal with the evil sorted, but before you can do this, you must become a wizard yourself. As you can see, it's a point-and-click adventure. I generally like these, and this one has its charms, though I haven't gotten very far yet. The main issue with it is that it's incredibly slow. Also, all of the spoken dialogue comes out only on the left speaker.
What's the square root of 1369?
37.
Joe says that this is a flaw of the original Amiga sound chip design. Everything is usually hard panned left or right, but personally I think he just doesn't have his right channel plugged in. You can tell that this was a ported Amiga game, and there's lots of these on this console. Still, if you have the time, I recommend it because it has a good sense of humor and it's decently enjoyable.
When I move my mouse pointer over you, it says Wizards. Oh, fair enough, I suppose. Disguise is off, lads. What did you want to speak to us about anyway?
If you want awesome platforming, then look elsewhere, cause this is SUPERFROG. So you're chillin' with your hottie when a jealous witch kidnaps your squeeze and turns you into a frog. I guess she was jealous of you getting between her and your hot blonde. But then you drink a strange bottle of liquid that was floating down the stream, which is always recommended. Now you're SUPERFROG and off you go to save the day. And your woman too. Here we have an extremely basic platformer. Unfortunately, the up button jumps, and if you're using the CD32 controller, you'll notice that the D-pad is crooked. This will often cause you to accidentally jump when you press right. It takes a while to get used to. There's lots and lots of items for you to collect as per usual with platformers on this system, but you need to collect a certain amount of coins here before you can complete the level. Everything has that European platformer feel, and back then I've got to say that they certainly were not pros of the genre. The control is kinda tough and not exactly fluid. The graphics look less than 16-bit, and the level design can be weird at times. The music is bouncy, but you won't be begging for a sound test. This game is okay, but I doubt it sold a lot of CD32s or Amigas. The Amiga version of Battletoads is playable here on the CD32. It has a cool intro with some nicely enhanced music. Unfortunately, that's where the goodness ends. First of all, you can only choose music or sound effects, not both thanks to the Amiga's very limited sound chip. I'll go with the music. Secondly, the game seems to use only one button. It's a damn chore to punch, and I'm still not quite sure how I'm doing it when I do it. The graphics don't look any better than the NES, really. The screen is a lot smaller. I made it all the way up to the third enemy in the game.
Here's Skeleton Crew by Core. Core is really good, so this should be good. Oh, it's by Early Core. Anyway, it still shows promise. It's an isometric run and gun for lack of better description. You can shoot, jump, and switch between weapons. Unfortunately, the control is weird as hell. You have two buttons that shoot. Holding either one causes your guy to begin rotating. The left shot button causes him to rotate right, and vice versa with the right shot button, completely backwards of what you'd expect. Holding both shot buttons simultaneously actually allows you to shoot straight. So, needless to say, you'll be spending most of your time holding both shot buttons. If it weren't for the bizarre controls, this could actually be a pretty decent game. I mean, I love the atmosphere and the music. It can be kinda tough to hit your enemies, and they're definitely bullet sponges, so the game could use a bit of refinement in that area as well. And you never get any weapon upgrades. All the stuff you collect just goes towards earning an extra dude, eventually. You can also get this one on the Genesis, and that one has an extra level. Liberation is another game that starts out with big ambitions. It has a really cool intro and they obviously spent a lot of time and effort on it. You're in kind of a cyberpunk future and you need to figure out what's going on, and I don't know, the story didn't really capture my interest. And honestly, neither did the game. You wander around in a first-person perspective, which is really cool for like the first 20 or 30 seconds. Each button shoots a different gun. You can also zoom in on objects and access them. I think I must have turned off a light switch because now everything's completely black. I can't see what I'm doing, how to get out of the room, or even how to turn the lights back on. I have no choice, I have to reset the game. Mainly, I just wandered around trying to shoot things with very little success. Sometimes things attacked me and I was clearly receiving damage. This game bored me to tears, and I can't in good faith tell you whether the game is good or bad since I really didn't play much of it. Anyway, let's check out James Pond 2 Robocod. I don't remember liking the Genesis games very much, so I didn't have high hopes for this one. But actually, I ended up liking it more than I thought I would. In this one, James is part robot for whatever reason, and he can extend himself as high as the screen will let him. He can then grab onto the bottom of ledges and whatnot, and then scuttle himself back and forth. The graphics are really colorful and there's some cool parallax scrolling, but the control feels a bit floaty and the collision detection seems kinda wonky. There's also some blind jumps since the screen area doesn't extend down as far as it should. In fact, I've noticed that quite a few CD32 games take up very little screen real estate, but it's still enough to work with and eventually get past. And since we're playing so many games in this episode, I didn't have a ton of time to put into this one, but I feel that it's pretty good despite its flaws. The level design is actually fairly well done. I wish the visual design was better though. I think it could benefit from more structured visuals instead of just random things lying around like volleyballs and simple backgrounds like a star pattern. I mean, how uninspired can you get? This game is on a ton of different platforms, and I'd recommend that you go with the Genesis or maybe even the Super Nintendo version instead. It's just too bad that they don't have the cool CD music that this one does. James Pond 3 Operation Starfish is also playable on here. You can tell this one came out after Sonic because it tries to be fast and hip. Unfortunately, it's extremely twitchy and much too fast for its own good. I liked being able to use different objects and whatnot, but overall I just wasn't feeling it. I'd rather play part 2.
Here's the amazing Heimdall 2. This is an isometric adventure game where you play as Heimdall. You must travel to different lands and collect pieces of the sacred amulet to stop Loki. As the game came to life on my screen, I was thinking how cool this looked. I really like the cartoony artwork here. Heimdall isn't the only playable character in the game. You can also choose a woman named Ursha. Both of these characters are clunky to control, but after a while I think it's something one could get used to. But one thing that I think would be hard to get used to is the inventory screen. Here you can equip weapons, use items, manage your spells, and more. There's lots of icons here and learning all of them will take some time, so you'll have to be very patient. The game in general moves really slow. Even the battles seem to take forever, and I'm not even sure if I'm getting close to killing this orc. He sure is giving me a pounding though. After playing this game for a while, I've decided that it's nothing that I really care to continue playing. If you like this game, great. I'm really happy for you, but as for me, I'll pass. Pierre le Chef is Out to Lunch is a pretty cool game. Pierre is a chef and his food is all escaped. Oh no! What to do? Well, it's lunchtime and the customers are waiting, so you need to go out and catch the food, all of which is still alive, even the cheese and meatballs. The first thing you gotta do is locate and acquire your net. This allows you to grab the food as it wanders around. You can also collect what I'm assuming is pepper to toss at your food, which will stun it, kinda like Burger Time. So you go around outside capturing food and then you gotta bring it back to the cage. Once you collect enough food, the doorway opens to the next level. I feel kind of bad for the customers who are going to have to eat this dirty ass food though. Oh well, what they don't know won't hurt them. The platforming is okay, but slightly slippery. And there's ice, which is even more slippery. The platforming gets tough pretty fast. How the hell do I make this jump? It's infuriating! Oh yeah, there's also a timer, and once you die, it's game over. This is a fun game, but I wish the platforming aspects were better. You can also get it on the Game Boy and Super Nintendo, but keep in mind that this version is 32-bit. Here we have the naughty ones. This is a single-screen platformer where you must find the key and reach the exit. Each level is loaded with enemies and obstacles, and it only takes one hit to kill your character. This means that you just can't run willy-nilly through the place and expect to find the exit with no problem. As you're going around, there's lots of stuff you can pick up for points, and enemies will also drop coins for you to collect. Luckily, you have a bouncy ball for a weapon. You can play with a friend, but both of these extremely naughty boys look almost identical in their naughtiness, so it's easy to get confused. It's a decent game that you could easily spend a good chunk of your time trying to see what comes next.
Disposable Hero is a horizontal shooter. You fire a rapid shot and there seems to be no way to obtain any other weapons or power up the shot despite a few different icons that you collect. Sometimes it's very difficult to position yourself and shoot down enemy guns, so it's best just to avoid them. I also find it weird that your weapon makes no sound at all when it fires. The music though is pretty good, and I like some of the graphical touches like the reflection in the water here. But overall though, the game is aptly named. It's very disposable. Banshee by Core is by far the best shooter on the system in my opinion. It plays kind of like the 1940 games from Capcom, only it's much more interesting. You fly around and you have a life bar. Sometimes icons will appear which can grant you power-ups, points, or restore your health among other things. What I really love is the vast amount of detail in the levels. There are tons of troops on the ground who think they can take you out with their little guns, and it's really fun shooting these guys. Usually they splat, but sometimes they catch on fire and run around if you destroy nearby equipment. It's so fun! Even skeletons will crawl out of their grave and try to shoot you down. Suffice it to say that your presence is not desired here. But the story behind this game is even better. It's 1999, but there are no microwave ovens and the TV is still in black and white. Therefore, it's only reasonable that the Styx Empire invades Earth. Your dad was eventually murdered by them for refusing to invent the microwave oven. That's right, they killed him because he did not invent the microwave oven. Now you're on a mission to avenge your dad and bring the Styx Empire down. You know, any game that has a story like that doesn't take itself too seriously, and that's good. The levels are super long, there's no music whatsoever, but not once did I feel bored like I usually do when I play overhead shooters. There's just so much going on, and I found that I had a smile on my dumb face for pretty much the entire time I was playing it. This is definitely a great game, and you can only get it on here and the regular ass Amiga. Fightin' Spirit is one of the few fighting games on the system as far as I can tell. In this one you get to choose from 10 different characters, each with their own fightin' spirit. Of course, you can pretty much forget about doing lots of sweet special moves using the CD32 controller. I was able to pull off one or two maybe, but I mainly just spammed my hard kick because that was a lot easier. This one is clearly inspired by super early Neo Geo fighting games. Almost everything reminds me of the Neo Geo. The artwork, the voices, the font, the intros, even the loading screen. The graphics are pretty good, except everyone's skin is way too orange. You guys gonna get cancer! Also, all of the stages only have a single layer of scrolling. The music, while streamed off of the CD, is only fair at best. It's nice to see an ambitious fighting game on here, but I just don't think the system was really meant for this.
Round 3. Fight.
And there you go, that's the Commodore Amiga CD32. Dave, what'd you think?
You know, I didn't mind the system. I would have liked to have actually seen what it's capable of. Out of the games that I played, I felt they're mainly just ports of 16-bit games. That's what it felt like, with probably some of them had enhanced soundtracks, but other than that, they just didn't feel like anything that screamed 32-bit to me.
Oh no.
How about you?
I agree. The games are hit and miss. I think we had a lot better games on the Genesis, the Super Nintendo, the Saturn, the PlayStation during that time, and even the 3DO.
Yeah, and we got a lot of those games that were on the Amiga CD32 to the Genesis. There was a lot of games from there on there.
Yeah, and so I think you know, it's kind of an interesting console, but I wouldn't go out of my way for it. Anyway, what do you guys think of the system? Let us know, and in the meantime, thank you for watching GameSack.
What's up, Joe?
Oh, hi Dave! I'm enjoying the D-pad of the Super Nintendo Entertainment System controller. It's a very comfortable D-pad that allows precise control over your virtual character.
What the hell is this, Joe? When your input is so unhindered, where's the challenge? Why waste time on this wimpy 16-bit machine? What do you want this time, Joe? You want to show me another underpowered system that I don't even have to put any effort into controlling?
Well, not this time, Dave. Now I've got the Commodore Amiga CD32.
Now this is more like it. With the 32-bit Amiga CD32 system's D-pad, you can tell that the challenging physical experience is every bit as important as the audio-visual experience. It's no wonder that so many European platformers were specifically designed to use the D-pad to jump when this D-pad is this challenging. And the Amiga CD32 itself is an amazing console, fully realizing the potential of 32 bits and placing the customer in an advanced state of hyper-reality. The CD32 wasn't even released in the US because it was too far advanced for the primitive society of the time, and it still is today. Joe, you are a great friend, and I'd like to give you $32, one for each amazing bit of the Amiga CD32.
There's only $4 here, actually.